Hello, and welcome back to the Autistic Tidbits and Tangents podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Kara Dymond. I'm an autistic teacher, author, and university lecturer from Toronto, Canada. And I'm so excited because we have back Maja. Maja, do you want to introduce yourself again?
Yes, I'm Maja Toudal. I am an autistic psychologist. I am based in Denmark, and I am on maternity leave. So that's why I'm not here so much right now.
Over to you,
and also,
Bruce.
incidentally, why my room is a complete mess.
Totally fine. Bruce.
Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Petherick. My day job is I'm the autistic advocate at Autism Canada, although technically, as of 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon, I'm on holiday for 2 weeks. Woot!
Yay!
And I don't like the holiday period, so there you go.
I'm so excited to be with two of my favorite people and to talk about transitions, change, the new year. This is our final episode for season 2. We will have more coming next season, but I thought, what better way to wrap this up than have a conversation with my two co-hosts?
Yay!
Yeah.
Music!
Welcome to Autistic Tidbits and Tangents.
Candid conversations between autistic off-hour professionals.
Cool.
Trigger warnings for this episode include autistic struggles within the medical system, talks of abortion, Roe versus Wade, and pregnancy-related issues, family relationships, loss of lives of loved ones and pets, capitalism, and of course, curse words. All right. Well, I guess we should start with a year in review. Maja, how has your year been?
Well, if you'll recall, last time you saw me, my office looked like an office, and now it's where we put all the stuff that doesn't really belong anywhere else. I've had to get myself a bed in here because it's closer to my baby's room. So when I have to get up 1,000 times a night, then I'm closer. And I've had a baby. She's almost 6 months old now.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a change.
Huge change. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I don't actually remember how much I've shared with you.
We've had 2 updates.
Yeah, we've had 2 very short updates. I've not perhaps gone into great detail, which I may or may not do. I'm kind of working on a book about the whole pregnancy and parenthood journey, and it may or may not actually become a book and come out. We don't know. The kind of quick summation of everything that's gone on is that I ended up having a birth that was traumatic for me and like psychologically traumatic. And we've gone through some changes in the family as well, with my relationship with my mother, which was also not very good. And I ended up having a healthy baby girl, and she's wonderful, but
She's
all of
lovely.
she's absolutely lovely. She's super fun and also very challenging because babies are challenging. Yeah. But basically what's happened is that because of everything, I kind of stumbled my way into a postnatal depression. And I'm now kind of dealing with motherhood and the postnatal depression and getting myself back on track. And luckily, I have the most wonderful husband and the most wonderful family. So that's all going to work out.
I'm so happy about that.
Yeah, I have all of the support that I could possibly wish for. And I have the most wonderful baby. So it's not, I have no reason to be miserable.
And I know you think she looks
sleeping
like your husband, but I think she looks like you. And I think she has there's a way that she looks at the world, like she's absorbing everything and analyzing everything so intelligently that looks just like you.
Oh, I say that she has a staring contest with the world.
Yeah.
Like everything, she's just staring at it, like trying to work it out.
Yeah, trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah. And, it could potentially mean that she's really intelligent, or it could potentially mean that she's like, huh?
The opposite.
We don't know. We don't know. And we won't know for a couple of years, of course. No, but she's definitely got my husband's dimples.
Yeah.
Which makes her very charming when she smiles.
Yeah.
Maja, I haven't talked to you about this, and please tell me if this is a little too sensitive. I am really interested to know how much of your struggles recently are to do with autism.
Good question.
And I so that's question one.
Yeah.
If Your Honor allows me a follow-up question, I would love to read a book about early motherhood from an autistic perspective, because that's certainly when you say you had a traumatic birth, I mean, from a male perspective, every birth seems so traumatic, and the fact that women can get through this is like amazing. And I've been in the delivery room and been as close as one could be, and it's still how you do it. The world is amazing, but especially somebody like yourself who's so in touch with your autistic self, I would love to know how that feels.
Yeah. So obviously that's kind of the point of why I wanted to even write this book, because I realized as I was pregnant and now in motherhood that I didn't have that book available to me. And so, yeah, definitely would have wanted such a book to exist. But also I think my particular circumstances are very unique.
Okay.
So some of it is to do with autism, definitely. Interesting point. So I talk to Tony Atwood quite a lot because we're working on a book together, and we do regular check-ins. So he told me at one point that 60% of autistic women actually suffer from postnatal depression, versus about 1 in 5 in the general population.
That's a huge number.
A huge number. And I think a part of that is to do with the fact that we just don't have access to information in an autistically friendly way. Like so I'll give you an example. In the hospital, after you've given birth, obviously you're confronted with do you want to breastfeed or do you want to have the baby on formula? And obviously most women will try to breastfeed. So that's happening, and your milk doesn't come in right away. Parents will know this. Your milk isn't coming in right away, and so the baby is actually starving. for the first couple of days. And so at the hospital, I was there for 3 days, and on, I think it was day 2 or 3, I'm not really sure, they ended up giving me a breast pump to help facilitate, the milk coming in. But they just gave it to me. They were like, here you go. Here's a breast pump. Use it. And it's like, well, thank you, but how often, for how long, like,
yeah, we need specifics.
I need information.
Mm-hmm.
And the hospital knew about my diagnosis. So they knew about my autism. They also knew about my ADD and my history with anxiety and depression. And still, none of that was really taken into consideration once the actual birth situation was over.
Yeah.
I will say that the staff that was there during the birth process was super professional, and they did everything they could to make it a manageable situation. And it just ended up not being that anyway, but that wasn't the staff's fault. That wasn't the hospital. But afterwards, the stay in the hospital, it was like nothing.
Yeah. And you're probably
like,
not in.
Now you're there. There's a baby. Figure it out.
And you're probably not in a place to advocate the way you normally would if you had questions, because your body's recovering, you're overwhelmed, there's so much going on, new baby,
well, you're
tired beyond belief.
It's so much because and obviously if you've had a natural birth, then there's going to be other factors, but for me, I ended up having a C-section under full anesthetic because the epidural didn't work, and the anesthetic that they would normally use for a C-section also didn't work.
Yeah. We were just talking about this with another guest, anesthesia, and how it doesn't work for us sometimes.
Yeah, it just didn't. It worked on one side of my body and not the other.
Oh no.
So that was fun. Yeah. So I ended up being under full anesthesia. And so I'm recovering from not only the C-section, but also from the anesthesia and the morphine and like everything.
Yeah.
And my husband is, having to carry the baby and having to do everything because I physically cannot carry her. So yeah. So some of it definitely autism related, and some of it was just things didn't go very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Funnily, I'm not sure. I know you've listened to every one of the podcasts that Kara and I've done minutely. Please, I'm joking. But you may not know that we've been working a lot at Autism Canada with now 2 groups trying to get hospital systems to recognize what autistic people need. And it's funny that one's to do with cancer. Actually, there's 3 people, because Kristen Hovert is also working on a similar system, and she works within a hospital system. But so much we're looking at is just we're looking at what happens before. And I've just realized that post-op is actually possible for cancer, possibly not as important, but for general population, that's super important.
It is. It is. I had several rounds of it. So I had actually 3 pregnancies, and if the book ever comes out, this will be included. But my first pregnancy was in a fallopian tube, and those pregnancies are not viable and can be potentially fatal. So I had to have surgery to have the fallopian tube removed. And so I had that surgery, and then I've had the C-section. And each time I had to ask the doctors and the nurses for such specific information about how to care for the wound, and like, what am I allowed to do, and like, what should I be watching out for? And then of course with the C-section, now I'm also breastfeeding. So what painkillers am I allowed to take? How much? How often? Like, all of that. And there's you're always going to forget something. But when you're autistic and you're trying to communicate and you're trying to get the information you need, but without sounding like a hypochondriac.
Yes.
It's, oh man, a headache.
So much could be mitigated just by them actually giving us the actual information. I was talking with another autistic friend recently, and she was saying how, her doctor will explain something to her, but not actually use the medical terms. So then she's researching it later, and it takes her forever to find out what on earth actually is the medical issue that they're dealing with. It's like, just tell me. Remove the guesswork. Talk to me like an intelligent person who can understand, and give me the terms, because otherwise, it can be such a nightmare trying to navigate.
It really can.
You mean to assume competency?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean, Bruce.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a thing that doesn't happen in the medical field very often. Like they will assume as the patient that you are dumb.
Yes.
Quite frankly.
But that must work against them too, because if you think about it, if we don't feel like we're sufficiently answered, we go to Dr. Google. We might be finding the wrong information. That just makes it all more complicated. Just tell us. Like,
I actually told the midwife who was in charge. So I actually ended up having 3 midwives because the birth took so long. So they
traded off. Oh my God.
Shifts. Yeah. So, but I told them and tried to make it very clear, even in the birth plan, like, if something is going wrong, just tell me. Give me the information, because I will get much more anxious not knowing than I will if you just give me the information. So even if something like potentially catastrophic is happening, I'd rather know. Yes.
I'm inclined to agree.
You're in I cannot imagine a time in your life when you've had so much sensory overload as it is in the birth process. And we all struggle with that we all struggle with that to certain degrees. Obviously, some of us struggle with it a lot. But your cognitive processing must be so turned on but then become disconnected from the body because you're having to think about it, that you need that information to help the regulation.
Yeah. I mean, I found that the pain itself was, of course, very challenging, but also the pain felt productive. Like, there was a reason for it. So there's unproductive pain where it's like, this just hurts.
Yeah.
And then there's productive pain where it's like, you have to do something to fix this. So I get back pain a lot from my back is hypermobile, and so I have to like crack it sometimes. And that pain is productive. Like, it's telling me you need to do this, right? So in the same sense, giving birth, that pain is like, you have to be doing this. And so that actually allowed me to focus and manage it when I needed to. But also at the same time, I have never had so much anxiety in a situation in my life.
That makes complete sense to me. That would be extremely anxious situation.
Yeah. Yeah, you can probably hear her in the background. She's being put down for a nap. She doesn't like napping.
Knowing that you are going to be that anxious, is it possible to prepare?
No.
No. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah,
Sorry.
It just isn't. And I think, so you will know this being a parent, it's not possible to prepare for parenthood. There's no book you can read that will prepare you. There's no conversation you can have that will prepare you. There's always going to be a level of uniqueness to your situation, but also a level of like, you don't know, you cannot understand, you cannot fathom the sleep deprivation and what it will do to your mental state. You cannot fathom the ways in which you will get to know yourself in the desperation that comes. And it's the same thing with birth. You cannot prepare. There's nothing you can do that will prepare you for the amount of pain you're going to be in or for what it feels like. There's definitely, so I felt like probably I was maybe 70% prepared. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I had read and I had talked and I had, all that. And I kind of, it's weird, but my second pregnancy, I ended up having to go through a medical abortion. The fetus was already dead, but my body wasn't getting rid of it. So I had to go through a medical abortion to do that. And the pain from that actually helped prepare me for birth, weirdly, because it's the same kind of pain. Yeah. Basically, yeah, it's gross, but I mean, you're trying to push something through your birth canal that doesn't fit.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, as someone who still would like to have a child, I think perhaps in some cases it's better not to be fully prepared.
I think so.
I was very scarred in high school. I went to a Catholic high school, and they showed us a video that included a live birth that I think was just meant to put us all off like having sex. It was quite effective in terms of birth control. Still haunts me a little bit.
I can imagine.
So this is an area where in some cases I want to go in not knowing, which is strange because I have a high need for predictability and knowledge and control.
Yeah. And the thing is, during a birth, you just don't have any of that.
That's true.
Like whatever is going to happen is going to happen. And the only thing you can do to mitigate the risks is to be surrounded by medical staff that know what they're doing.
Yes.
And that respect your decisions, right? So
now, were you able, I mean, I'm sure you weren't for the actual C-section part, but when you were trying to deliver naturally before that, were they accommodating in terms of lowering the lights and things like that, that I know you and I had talked about?
You know what? It ended up just not being a thing. So I had made a playlist with music that I find soothing. And we just had that playing over and over and over.
Okay.
And I think potentially that playlist was about an hour long.
Yeah. How many times did you hear it? It was like the mall at the holiday times on a loop.
So I was in birth for about 24 hours. Yeah. And I will say the best thing about that experience in terms of mitigating trauma was the fact that I was the one that got to say, I give up. I want a C-section now. So that decision was not made for me.
Yes.
Luckily.
Yes.
Just on the C-section, and I'm not too sure if you're aware, Maya. C-sections are ridiculously common in North America, and funnily enough, in Australia, it's gone from rare to almost common. What is it for you in Denmark? Is a C-section a common thing?
I mean, relatively. So natural birth is more common than C-section. Planned C-sections are I saw a chart at some point. I think planned C-sections are somewhere around 20%.
Wow.
Okay, that's possibly, yeah. Like in North America, it's quite common for people like to get pregnant and then be saying at like 6 months, "I'm having a C-section." It's it's all set and it's all planned, which still it rubs me the wrong way because there's a medical reason for it, and you're putting yourself under danger. Like especially during birth process. That's not when you should be doing anything extra that's not needed. However, that's a cultural thing. I kind of wanted to ask about that because
I think
you asking for it this time is I think a common thing here.
Yeah. So for me, obviously I don't know how much listeners know about this, and I'm sorry for graphic details. But in order to give birth, you have to be dilated 10 centimeters, which is a lot, by the way. And
I'm sorry, Kara. I apologize. Kara's just like,
people need to watch this just for my reactions. Don't listen. Go and watch it.
Don't worry. Your downstairs recovers.
Okay.
It goes back to normal.
Okay.
It's supposed to do this. And you actually really want to dilate that much because otherwise it's worse. So I got stuck. And this is something that can happen with an epidural, but also some women just don't dilate fully. So obviously I don't know what it was for me, but I got stuck around 7 centimeters. And the gap from 7 centimeters to 10.
That's a big one.
Because you're talking about a diameter, it's a big difference. And also, my baby was twisting, so she was looking up, which you want them to be looking down or to the side. You really do not want them to be looking up. That complicates things. And so everything was just kind of going wrong. And we had been in that situation for 6 hours. And I wasn't getting any further. So after 6 hours of just being told, well, you're this dilated and that's it. And then it's like, okay, it's taken me 24 hours to get to this point. How much longer will it take me to get to 10?
Yes.
And at that point, I didn't have the strength to keep going because I'd actually been in the hospital for almost a full 24 hours before I even went into labor.
Yeah.
So I'd been awake at that point for almost 2 days straight. And I couldn't keep going.
Don't worry. We are all in full support of your decisions.
So, I mean, for me with like natural birth versus C-section, I would always want to give birth naturally because there is a reason that we're sort of quote unquote designed to do that. But also, like, if anyone has ever given anyone a hard time about choosing to have a C-section, there's a reason we choose that too. And I think a part of it is because birth is terrifying.
Yes, it is.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's a doctor. And this was actually about pregnancy because I'd had some pretty scary symptoms. And he tells me at one point, just like, well, prior to modern medicine, pregnancy and therefore also birth was the most dangerous thing that a woman could do. Like, it is life-threatening to go through pregnancy and birth.
And I'm thinking about my grandmother, or not my grandmother. My grandmother gave birth 8 times. My great-grandmother gave birth 16 times. Like,
yeah, exactly. And like, there are these immensely powerful women who manage to go through the experience so many times and still remain, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, intact, because it is potentially going to mess up your body permanently. And then, modern medicine is the thing that allows so many more women nowadays to survive it, and frankly allows so many more babies to survive as well. But it is, I cannot describe how angry I was when Roe versus Wade was overturned in the United States. That happened just around the time that I had to have a medical abortion.
yes, I remember.
Oh.
And so I've had technically 2 abortions. One of them was a surgical removal of a fallopian tube, and the other was medical. Both of those would have potentially killed me. Both of those pregnancies would have potentially killed me. And so the idea that any person ever would be forced to go through pregnancy and birth is something that enrages me, even more now than it did before I'd had any pregnancies.
Can I make it? I want to make sure that everybody doesn't misunderstand what I was talking about before. I do not. But I just want to make sure. Anybody having a C-section, I mean, and it's a million times more what you were going through, and that's the point. Yes. I think C-sections are absolutely necessary. And sorry,
and sometimes they really are. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why you would plan a C-section. Your placenta can be located in a way that makes it impossible to give birth.
Yeah.
There can be a plethora of reasons to have a planned C-section. And there's also a plethora of reasons to have emergency C-sections.
As you found out.
Yeah, and I just think it's something we don't talk about. And so today's episode was supposed to be about transitions, and now we've spent 40 minutes talking about this.
This is a major transition.
Yeah.
It is a major transition. And I think that a part of what we don't really discuss in a realistic way as a society, as a global society, is the transformation that you go through having given birth, and that you go through from being not a parent to being a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Like the transition is intense.
Mm-hmm.
And so at one point, my husband actually told me that he had found an article or something talking about matrescence. Mm-hmm. So from the word adolescence, people are apparently now starting to talk about matrescence as in becoming a mother, being a transition on par with adolescence in terms of how life-altering it is.
Yes, and the steep learning curve.
Yeah. And I see it because it takes a year for your hormones to return to normal after having given birth. And something I didn't know, your baby leaves cells behind in your body. Your body is physically never yours again, alone.
Yeah.
You have your baby's DNA as a part of your body for the rest of your life.
Wow.
And I don't know if there's anything like biological about that causes a change. But certainly knowing it is, I feel, a pretty fundamental change in how I think about my body.
Mm-hmm. Maybe
that's weird. I don't know.
No, I love that.
I think this is absolutely fascinating. And again, it's so difficult for me to talk about it because this is always a secondhand experience for me. But it's interesting you talk about the DNA because, of course, your daughter has your DNA too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an exchange in that way. And when you sort of say, "Is my body changed?" Well, it's like, yeah, you've got different DNA now, and that perfectly well, like that will change you. That will change you.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I've always thought of it as like there's a sort of metaphysical, invisible umbilical cord always between you and your child, but that's actual physical evidence that your connection is so deep.
Yeah, and there's a transcendence to it in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But
You've
it
leveled
also
up.
I've leveled up. Yay. No, but it's also really caused me to reflect on relationships that I have with family.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that I've spoken to Kara about privately, but one of the major changes has been in how I've related to my mother. Because it wasn't until I was about to have a baby that I actually went through another transition, which was to think, was this a relationship I wanted to be in? Was this something I wanted to subject my child to?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, it's a shift in yourself, but also in how you relate to the world.
Mm.
Because now every relationship that I'm in is also a relationship that my child is in. To some extent.
No,
because every
right.
relationship affects me, and everything that affects me will affect her.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really caused a lot of thinking about how I wanted my life to be, what was important to me, and how I how I wanted me and my husband and my child to be treated.
Mm-hmm. And I think for someone like you, and like, I think you and I have this in common too, where there's sort of like a nurturing aspect to your personality, and you might not have made that decision if it was just for yourself. It's hard to make those decisions for yourself. So now you have the ability to do that because you're taking care of your child, which is a really beautiful and like really profound gift that you've given your daughter. And, I'm sorry that you were not able to give that to yourself on your own, but I'm glad that you've been able to reframe things and do it this way.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's a super positive thing. Kara said it much more eloquently and nicely, but I think that's it. Like it's interesting. I've been a parent for 23 and a half years now, and I never thought about what you just said, like in an active way. And it's true. It's absolutely true. And it's funny. We're talking about transitions, and this is a week of reverse transitions for our family. I'm going to be careful about not talking for my wife here, but it's an anniversary. Yesterday was the anniversary of my mother-in-law's death a year ago. And weirdly enough, 2 days before that, my dad's house was sold, and that wasn't a family house, but it's the house that when I've gone back to Australia the last 3 times, it's where I stayed. And it's also the 20th anniversary of my mother's death. So it's like this is a very, it's mothering night type of idea. And I'm thinking how, I'm trying not to speak on my wife's behalf. This is where I'm trying to clarify. Well, let's just say that my wife's relationship with her mother, now that she has passed, is much more clear. And I mean that in good ways, basically the whole way. And it does make me think about, I am not a family person traditionally, and I don't know why. I think this is not the autistic aspect. I think this is much more my personality, but I've always had such a pleasant memory of my parents. I often talk about my mother, but there's nothing with my dad either. But I forget how important my mother was often, and it's kind of these anniversaries when I think about things like when during her funeral, we got sympathy cards from people that hadn't seen her for over 20 years.
Wow.
And having these things about, my mother she would go shopping. We lived in Brisbane, so a million people city, a fair sized city, but we lived in a little suburb of about 20,000 people, which was slightly isolated from the rest of the city. So it's a little town within a city. My mother would go shopping, and she would just drop in to almost everybody, every shop, and just say hello. But it wasn't, she wasn't doing it to do anything other than, that's kind of fundamentally the sort of person she was. She just wanted to say hello to everybody, didn't make a big thing, wouldn't sit down and have a cup of tea, just, maybe asked a question and then moved on. And that's what the cards are all about. And it's like, I don't, living, because you're living through that. Your parents are doing these things, and you don't think there's anything's different or strange or whatever. But around this time of year, I remember this about my mother so much, and think that's kind of, I wish I had celebrated that a bit more when she was alive.
Yeah.
And how as Kara, you said, that invisible umbilical cord, it's still there. And I definitely sing it to my wife, this time of year. And probably me too now.
Wow. I think we definitely reflect more on who people were when they're gone, like what they gave to the people around them, what influence they had on the world. It's
their meaning in your life, in your journey.
Yeah. And it's odd that we don't reflect more on the living. But there's something to do with remembering that causes that.
I don't know you well enough yet, Kara. I so much appreciate you. I can never tell you how much you mean to me.
Right back
Thank
at
you for that reminder.
Both of you. I'm getting teary, but I reach out to both of you anytime. When things are going well and when things are not going well. You are both a huge part of my support system, and I love you both.
Oh, thank you.
And now I'm all teary, so I'm going to turn it over to Bruce. So, Bruce, your year in review, you just talked a little bit about some of those sort of emotional transitions. Anything happen in the previous year, or anything upcoming that has been a transition or will be a change?
I think it's been a good year. Moving here has saved my family. Individually, every one of my family has grown more secure and happier. So that's not going to stop. That's still continuing. I've spent a year as an advocate in a national organization and in a unique position. And I think my memory of that has been incredibly positive and humbling, and wonderful. And I tick all those boxes that one's manager wants you to tick, and which don't mean anything to me, but that's been great. I think what my other half of this year in review transition is that I'm still coming to terms with the balance between my current and past life. And I had thought just to stop playing music in public. I'm never going to stop. But the piano is still right here, right here. But I think that possibly the best thing that's happened to me this year is being involved in 2 low-maintenance music ensembles, and knowing how much I really, really have missed that, and how much I now need to I need to do it. So I did a professional gig last week, and I've got 2 more in January, and that keeping that balance is going to be really super important, I think, because I did an interview on CBC. It was recorded last week, and it was about sensory-friendly events, about something, a big event here in Vancouver that I helped set up. And the interviewer had like 12 questions, got on them. But halfway through it, we started talking about music, because it's still this, people still find it fascinating that I'm an autistic person that had a, very successful music career. And I've still got to acknowledge that. So the year in review has been really quite positive, and also maybe challenging for good, positive outcomes. And the next year, we've got amazing things set up at Autism Canada. I mean, we've just signed 2 major education programs, and I've got a lot of teaching, which is absolutely brilliant. And some I still can't say who they are with, but this is big. And you know, I think if you think 2 years ago, the amount of autistic education in the country was like this level. Now, just from my work at Autism Canada, it's like this level. Right? You can't see that, and it's like that's a celebration.
Yes, it is. I think you've really, I mean, you were already a great advocate, but I feel like you've grown in confidence, in the role that you have, in your ability to support other people. And you do such a great job of not just speaking for yourself, but making sure that we're talking about everyone. Yeah. So well done, Bruce.
So, Kara.
Yeah, do I have to talk about myself?
There's stuff going on in your life.
Yeah. And you're doing the second most important transition.
Moving? Is that what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, sorry, is marriage the second one, or a permanent partnership or something?
Basically doing the same, yeah. So it's been a year. It's been a year. The year began with navigating dating. You know, there was some promise, some hopefulness. And I've discussed this in another episode. And the person I was dating at the turn of the new year last year did not use soap to wash dishes. That was just one of several factors contributing to the decline of that relationship. But shortly after, I met my current partner, the love of my life, and it has been so wonderful just to like meet someone and just feel a level of comfort that I don't think I've ever felt with another person, you know, and we both just knew. And he's also autistic, and just we understand each other's needs really well. Like, it's incredibly supportive. And we recently made an offer on a house. So we will be moving in 4 months, I think. We set a long closing because I have to sell the place that I'm currently living at. And like, I'm dreading all of the executive functioning, already the executive functioning things that have come up, but all the things you have to do. But I'm just trying to take things one step at a time. And luckily he is more organized than I am. So we kind of counterbalance each other that way. I can make phone calls. I hate them, but I will make the phone calls. And he can help with the organization. And we've just gone through a renovation.
He gives you the scripts,
yes.
And then you can, yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, and all of that's been while juggling my job, my university teaching job, as well as my elementary job, and trying to write a book that is slower going than I would like, but I'm going to try to focus on that while packing boxes. We'll see how it goes.
Oh, don't we know that feeling?
Yes. But I recently also, another transition that's been a difficult one. My cat Jerry, so I have this is one of my cats, but Jerry was my best buddy, my best friend, and we had to put him down recently. So still talking about it gets me cryy, but my partner
it's
has
losing
been
a
wonderful.
family member.
Oh yeah. Like
it
10
really
years
is.
together. I mean, he was 4 or 5 when he was adopted, but 10 years together, and just like, I come home, would cuddle him, like, and he was a cat who put up with everything, right? Like he would sleep under my arm and like just like face towards me, and he'd put his paw on my face, and I never felt like he was going to scratch me. Like, you know what I mean? He was the gentlest cat in the world, and just like my self-regulatory buddy. You know, I'd come home, lie in the dark with my Jerry. So that's definitely been tough, but my partner has just been absolutely wonderful, and completely understands what an emotional journey that is, and having someone support me through that has been like such a change since last time I had a cat pass away. And I'm so excited moving forward to, I mean, we're, both of us, we have that mix that I think many of us autistic people know, where we're excited, but we also experience terror at the same time, where we're going, oh my gosh, this is something new. This is something new. It's so huge. Like all of the things we have to adjust to in owning a house, and being homeowners, having no more money available for things, having to deal with like maintenance of things, and what to do when things break. And we're gonna have to really schedule things, because my object impermanence will mean that I forget that things need to be done if there's not like a list, right?
There's a second round of that coming for you when you have a baby.
No.
Actually, you know what, Kara, you're raising something again, this lack of information we have. I have no idea how to own a house, even though I didn't co-own a house, but my wife owned a house before I joined the relationship. So when I moved in with her, I was an owner of a house, and it's like, I don't know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I think that's another book that needs to be written.
Yeah.
Like the Autistic Guide to Owning a House, because you're quite right. Like, paying the bills. Okay, like that's one thing, but suddenly it's not only it becomes your responsibility, but there's so many more bills. They're more complex what they mean. The penalty of not paying them is greater.
Navigating insurance.
Yes. Oh, all of this stuff just my heart is actually racing just thinking about it. I'm sort of living off of a to-do list right now, so I'm like, just focus on one thing at a time. Like, I had the house inspection. I had, out of that, I was like, I'm going to hire a plumber to snake the drain because the inspector's not sure if the clay pipe under the house is okay. And, so just like one thing at a time. Call insurance, see if they'll insure a house with solar panels. All of the things, and it's just beginning. And my cat is like chewing on something. Oh, there we go. Got it out of her mouth. Sorry. So that'll be a huge transition, but and it'll be farther from work for me. My partner works from home, but to me, it's completely worth it, because it is a house that backs onto a trail system. It really feels like, even though you're in a community, like it feels like you're in the country to some degree. And for me, nature is like the only place where I completely relax. So being able to come home and I can like get out of my car and go for a walk, drop my lunch bag off, go for that walk. Just driving, half of the drive is highway, but then once you're off the highway, it's like you're going through the farming communities. And I have found the drive very relaxing the few times I've gone back and forth, right? Like once you're off the highway. So
that sounds amazing.
I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about being able to make the home our own. Like, it's going to be such an autistic house. We're going to have all the dinosaurs and Lego on display. It's like, we have plans to make the living room like library with all of our fossils and books on display. And it's our house. It's going to be ours. And, we have a similar type of nerdiness. So that's great. Things I'm not looking forward to as much. So when I did the inspection, I got, I upgraded to the mold and asbestos package. So there is some isolated mold in the attic. So the attic has to be emptied and treated, and adding ventilation. And then there's this, it's, the age of the house, there's asbestos in all of the joint compound, popcorn ceilings. So any renos that we want to do over time are going to cost a lot more, because first you have to get it stripped, like that room stripped, or you're putting up a wall that's just over it. But so we're going to have to be good with saving our money for some of the plans that we have, or we have to win the lottery. So such is home ownership.
The thing that you've got, and I have to say, the thing we've got too is, yes, those things are scary and they're expensive and things, but your backyard, it just offsets everything.
Oh yeah. And the house has good bones. It's a great house. We won't need to move. We got a house that has 4 bedrooms. One will probably make an office. One is the master. I'm hoping that my younger brother Danny will live with us someday, so we have a room earmarked for Danny. And then, we will allot for one child maybe in the future. Like we're not going to have to move. So we tried to pick something we'd be very happy with for a very long time. And then everything else is like, yeah, we save for it and then we do whatever we want. The dream kitchen I want one day, all those little things. But I feel like I have to become a real adult and I don't feel like a real adult. And it's very, very scary.
Oh, yeah.
What does that mean?
Do we ever, Bruce, do you feel like a real adult?
When my children need strong support.
Yeah.
You know what? And here's one definitely. And it's funny. This comes back to something that Maya said about relationships. None of us have a plurality of friendships. I think the kids a little bit better than Meredith and I. But the last couple of weeks, we've reached out to people to like start friendships. And I think that's a bit of adulting I haven't done before. And it's been kind of interesting. It's a little scary, but it's amazing how reaching out to some people, we have a really good feeling that we could be making a number of good friends, by adulting, but, approaching them or, hey, do you want to go out for dinner?
Yeah.
Like something that just doesn't enter my mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's weird because becoming a parent, I've had a bit of that experience as well. Like when she needs something, things that I normally would not get done, get done. So there's this weird kind of, I'm more capable of adulting when I need to, but I don't innately feel capable necessarily. Yes. I just somehow get it done anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so we all just muddle through. That's all right.
I think honestly, if there's a key takeaway that I want every autistic person to know, it's that everyone fakes it. No one has their shit together.
That is reassuring, I have to say.
And it's not just other autistic people that don't have their shit together.
Yeah. Everyone
does not have their shit together. They're just pretending.
Yeah.
They're just putting out fires.
Yeah.
And that's all you have to do. Like, as long as you're surviving, you're good. You did it. You beat the system. Like,
Bruce, you look pensive.
Well, I'm reflecting in such a positive way about what Maya just said, and I think it's also it's almost I was going to say an autistic joy that we know we mask, and then the joy finding is that everybody else masks, but we're more aware of it, which I think is inherently better.
Yeah.
I mean, this is Kara. To your point about moving, nobody knows what it's like parenting, but parenting is a universal thing, and fundamentally, if we all went back to the forests, we could still parent. We would find a way. Owning a house that's civilization and thousands of years history. You need to ask people, because neurotypical people won't. We're going, this is so confusing. And it's like, it is confusing. It's ridiculous. Yeah. How do you select a plumber? That's trust.
Yes.
Right? And it's like, you know what? You need to ask your friends. You need to ask local people. And if no one gives you something, you go, okay, I'm not sure how this is going to, I am really not sure how this is going to work out. And that's okay.
I am hoping that the sellers of the house, so the sellers of the house lived in the house for like over 40 years. They raised their family there. They're now like, retirement age. So they're downsizing, but they really wanted someone who would love the house, who would appreciate the solar panels, who would appreciate the landscaping that they've done. And I ended up writing a letter when we made our bid on the house that said how much I loved their home. I could tell that they have loved it over the years. I hope that there'll be a steep learning curve, but I hope that we can cherish and take care of the house as well as they did. I talked about my connection to nature and, envisioning potentially having a family there if we're so lucky. And anyway, they said I was a kindred spirit apparently. And, with the woman in the house, and we've had some emails back and forth through our realtors, and they're staying in the community, and they're very much like core important members of the community. So I think they might be my like surrogate parents in that neighborhood, where I can be like, hey, show me how you gardened, because they put in all of this energy to make it so beautiful, and I can ask them for advice sometimes. And I think they want that connection too, hopefully. So,
they're definitely going to want to see their work be continued.
Yeah. So
I think people who spend a long time in one house, it becomes more than just a house.
And it's got to be so bittersweet to leave. All of those happy times, those memories there.
Yeah.
So they were waiting for the right people, I think, to come along. So.
Yeah. Yeah. My husband's family have a farm. I think I've mentioned it on the podcast, maybe. They have a Christmas tree farm.
Yeah.
And that plot of land has been several different things. Like it's been a berry plantation and stuff like that, but it's been in his family for 11 generations.
Holy.
Wow.
Yeah. And so right now there's 2 generations living there. And the 3rd generation up are living nearby. So there's so much family history tied to that place. And I can see that family history of whatever it takes, that place needs to stay in the family somehow. Whatever we need to do, we cannot leave that, because that is the legacy.
Yes.
That's so much history, and there's so much history with that place. And it's also a really, really old building. It goes back centuries, and it used to be a speakeasy, actually.
That's amazing.
Yeah. They're still in the basement. I don't know what this is called, but where they used to brew the beer.
Okay.
It's still in the basement.
I want to see a picture of that next time you're over.
I don't actually know how to get to the basement even.
What?
I've never been there. I've only been in the main house.
Oh my gosh. Okay. We're going to go adventuring whenever I make my way over to Denmark.
So this is in fact, this is a very typical neurodivergent perspective, maybe. Coming from Australia, 11 generations is impossible.
Yeah.
And my family moved in late 19th century, and I'm just calculating that's 4 or 5, depending on, there was a weirdness to it. And, you can only go back 2 more generations. And that's the first time Europeans went to Australia. And it's 11, even from somebody from North America, that's I don't think there's anywhere in Canada that possibly could have property that's 11 generations old.
Mhm.
Yeah,
this is much older.
Yeah.
and it's funny how almost blasé you are about it. And why I'm saying the neurotypical neurodivergent aspect of it is like, I cannot comprehend this weirdness at all, but I also understand it exists, and yay.
If you're ever in Denmark, I have to take you to a nearby town. So I live about 10 minutes away from Elsinore, which is where the castle of Hamlet is.
Wow.
Cornwall.
I will be obnoxious and quote it nonstop, just so you know.
Well, the thing is, the most interesting part of that city.
Get thee to a nunnery. Sorry, proceed.
The most interesting part of the town isn't the castle.
Yeah. Oh.
It isn't.
What is it?
There are so many streets still in that town with original buildings that are 3, 4, I think maybe even 500 years old.
Wow.
And people still live there.
Amazing.
So these like cobbled streets that are crooked, and like the houses are maybe 2 or 3 stories, but they're completely crooked, and the ceilings are low, and like and they are there's a law that you can't alter them in any way that's not historically appropriate. So like if there's a damage to the building, you can't put a modern window in, for example. You have to keep them somewhat historically accurate. And there's so many buildings in that town that are really old.
Wow. And like we just don't make things the way we used to, you know?
We don't, but also like you can tell that these houses have been through some stuff.
I believe it.
Like just the crookedness and
amazing.
Like how tiny everything is.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah. And there are so many like really funny stories about that town that still survive because the local population just keep them going. And we actually just went to a play earlier in the year about a drama that occurred. There's stories of like people seducing the rich man's daughter and like getting almost executed. Like,
wow.
There's insane stuff because it's centuries ago, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, the good old days when you can execute somebody for looking at the mayor's daughter the wrong way.
Well,
Are the doorways low?
Oh, yeah. They're tiny.
Yeah. Because that's something, there are a couple of colonial era buildings that I've been to in Australia. And the first thing I noticed, I'm 6'1.5". And the first thing I notice is that not only the ceilings are low, I've done that before, but like I have to duck to get through the door.
Yeah.
And then to find out it's because humanity has grown so much. The average height of a person is so much. And it's like, that's interesting. I was going to, again, amusingly bring back to Australia for a second. In Melbourne, there are what's called Federation houses. So those houses built between like 1890 to 1920, and there's still quite a fair number of them. Again, there's laws in Melbourne that you're not allowed to. You need to make sure any housing repairs are sort of within the style, and so there is actually a paint company that's entire job is to create what's called Federation colors, which are the colors that we used in the turn of the 20th century, that they still make the same the same dye or the same hue, and that's all they do.
without like mercury and lead or whatever, all the toxic ingredients.
And obviously there's modern technology in the paint, so they're longer lasting and more rain resistant and all those good things, but it still was a little bizarre. I lived in one that was an 1890s house, and there's some little minor repair that had to be done. It's like, oh, we need to make sure we get the Federation paint color right. And it's like, oh. And you suddenly then look in this particular street, half the houses were Federation, and they all had similar color schemes. Anyway, just I do love that we fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's super fun to live in areas that have so much history. It's there's one town that takes a little while to get there because it's kind of in the middle of the country where I'm in one end. Obviously, so Kara and I have talked about this. Canada travel times and Denmark travel times are just not comparable. Like it takes 4 hours to get from one end of the country to the other.
Oh, gosh.
And we feel like that's a long time. But there's the town that H.C. Andersen came from. It's called Odense. And again, that town, really, really old town, and there's a lot of old buildings still standing. And of course, his old house is still there.
Wow.
So we've got a lot of places like that in Denmark. And one thing that I find really funny, like it's a kind of mean joke, but it's also hilarious. So I love Eddie Izzard.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
And one of her jokes, I believe she's transitioned now. So one of her jokes was, "I come from Europe, where history comes from." And it's when you go to America or Australia, like it's palpable how like Europe hangs on to these old buildings and to the history of things. And for the United States, like history is, it seems to be something, well, it seems to be something very different as well. Like the way that Americans think of their history is perhaps more nationalistic in a way. And Denmark, like we have the oldest flag in at least the Western world.
Really?
Yeah. Oldest flag. And of course we do have some sense of nationalism, like, we're Danes and there's a
at least
pride there.
We're not the Swedes, right?
Well, that's the thing, though, because so Scandinavia will tease each other like brothers and sisters. The thing is, we've been at war with Sweden for something like 1,000 years. And obviously now we're not. We haven't been for a good long while. And at this point, it's more like, Swedes, Danes.
Yeah.
But if anyone outside of Scandinavia comes in and says anything about the other country, it's like, don't you dare talk about like that's the Swedes. That's our neighbors. Yes. Don't you say anything about them. Like it's this weird relationship.
Yeah.
But we still it's so funny. Like one of the like big jokes about like Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Germany is the pricing. Norway is super expensive. So the Norwegians go to Sweden to buy alcohol. And then the Swedes go to Denmark to buy alcohol because it's cheaper here than in Sweden. And the Danes go to Germany.
Yeah. That's unbelievable.
Like, it's so, and for some reason that's just common knowledge, and
Just
then
how it's done.
Yeah, that's just how we do it.
I've often wondered about this, that the thing about Europe is,
There's a lot of things about Europe.
well, the borders are so artificial. And so the borders have been porous for 5,000 years.
Yeah.
And so, but there is a commonality to the Scandinavian people just by proximity. But there are, then some war chief 3,000 years ago decided this is my land and it's, it's arbitrarily here. And then suddenly Denmark gets created. I'm simplifying. But
Yes.
the people who live there, like, it's like, oh, okay, we're Danes now. Okay. But my best friend is a Swede across the river, across the ocean. I'm still going to go and talk to them, but they're a different person now. I think there's that artificiality about nationality and borders that you have to live through, because it's just the proximity just makes it stupid.
It does. And I've never really understood it, to be honest. Like, I don't understand why there have to be different countries. Mm-hmm. Like, I do not understand. We're just people.
How autistic of you.
Yeah, yes. I know. But like, it's
just a population management thing, It's just, And it's hard to govern the more people.
For me, the only thing that makes sense how to think about countries and borders and stuff is to think that people in power need us to be afraid of other people in order to control us.
Also true.
And that's the only thing that really separates us.
Well, and I think it goes back to that idea of like, how many people can you actually empathize with? When you live in a small village, everyone. Yeah. It's easier to make, decisions for the benefit of everyone. The larger the group is, the more.
Yeah. But I think the number of people that we can actually empathize with is something like 50. Mm-hmm. Like, that makes sense for tribes. It doesn't make sense for countries. Yeah. I cannot empathize with all of Danes.
Yes.
Like, I can't. And at the same time, I can empathize with all humans. Mm-hmm. But those two scales for me are the same. Mm-hmm. Like, I care equally about some fellow Dane that I never ever met, and a fellow Chinese person that I never ever met. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
their lives are the same to me.
Yes.
And I don't understand why they aren't to other people.
I hear you. A life is a life is a life. I don't know how people can compartmentalize in such a way that it's us versus them when we're all just human.
Well, but I can us versus them when it comes to politics. Because if someone has a political stance that hurts me.
Okay.
So, for example, I mentioned earlier about Roe versus Wade. If someone is anti-abortion, then they have a political stance and an ethical stance that hurts people, that kills people. Mm-hmm. And I know and can empathize that they feel that they are protecting babies. But for me, and this is maybe a weird thing to say, having been through pregnancy and having given birth, but like the comprehension of how dangerous pregnancy and birth is makes it much more palpable. Is that the word? Mm-hmm. How harmful anti-abortion stances are. Like that's just a very personal example for me. And obviously I don't expect everyone to empathize or to share that opinion with me, but I do find that I have an us versus them mentality when it comes to certain political stances. That's just an example.
Mm-hmm.
And weirdly enough, like you are exactly the subject matter expert here. And you know, let's be like the three of us. There's two subject matter experts and one person who is an ally. Okay, but you are like, you're the one that should be talking about abortion rights. And I got to watch what I'm saying because I try not to make the podcast too political. Although I think we all are on like the same page. But it's like, it's exactly what you've gone through. Your perspective is that by far the most important than any random male politician. Mm-hmm. Completely. Like, and
I just think we have a problem with politicians trying to regulate people's bodies. Yeah.
Yep.
I think there's a general issue with politicians being influenced by lobbyists rather than experts.
Well, the anti-science, the push towards anti-science over the last, I don't know how many years, it does not take us to great places.
It does not.
No, it does not.
No.
And the anti-science thing is sad because 100 years ago, it was a lack of education.
Mm-hmm.
And 80 years ago, it was getting better because more and more people were getting educated in a whole bunch of different ways and it was available to everybody. And then 50 years ago, it's like, oh, yeah, this is really, really good. What we've got is not anti-education, but like very specific.
Well, we
willful
live in
ignorance.
We live in an era of misinformation, deliberate misinformation, that sort of keeps that us versus them going, actually, in a lot of ways. And, you know, I find it incredibly stressful to think about just like, I don't know, how some of these anti-science views like propagate. And I think I'm an optimist at heart, and I still believe humans in general are good people. I know that's a sweeping generalization and not true for a lot of people, but so I often feel like, well, like you said, the ignorance, you know, people don't always know better because our reality is curated now. What we read in the media, what information gets through to us. And if you're not seeking out, I don't know where I'm going with this, but it drives me up the wall.
But I think there's a point to be made there. And we've gone completely off topic now, but I have to say this, that when you say you believe that people in general are good people, well, of course they are. It's just that what we believe is good are different things.
Yes.
So I find this very often when I'm reading or watching fiction, like the bad guy. Okay, well, if you ask the bad guy,
they think they're good.
They're probably like, they probably don't think they're the bad guy. They probably think the good guy is the bad guy.
They're the hero of their own story. Yes.
Yeah. And in general, people are. You won't meet someone who believes themselves to be evil unless
I think they probably exist, but they're like serial killers.
Yeah.
They know they're evil, you know.
I don't know that they know they're evil.
I mean, if they're like legit
the people
serial
who
killers, I think they probably know what they're doing is not a good thing, you know.
They know it's not socially acceptable.
Okay.
If they thought it was evil, they wouldn't do it. The people who believe they are evil are people who have been manipulated into thinking they're evil, and they are usually very, very depressed.
We're getting into moral relativism here, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, that like what, and I mean that quite seriously. It's like, when we're talking about evil, like what does that mean? Yeah. And even the three of us, who I think have a very similar moral, ethical standpoint, you know, there's probably still, the three of us would disagree maybe what's evil. Actually, it's kind of interesting. I thought you were going to use the word bad person, because it's like that's one thing that I get to some of the clients I interact with. They think they're bad people, and that's the disabling aspect to autistics. Yeah, bring it back to autistics.
Let's do
and
that.
that's really super. From your profession, like I'm sure you're dealing with that sort of mindset quite a lot.
I meet a lot of people who have been convinced that they are stupid, lazy, unworthy somehow of respect or love. And
internalizing that.
Yeah. And the thing is, the people who believe those things about themselves very often are people who struggle and who really try to please everyone and who just don't feel like they can do better. Like they don't believe they can do things differently. And so when you kind of, and this is not something you do to yourself, obviously, this is something your environment does to you, but when you've built an internal schema about, I'm a bad person, or I'm lazy, I'm stupid, I'm this or that, it's so hard to break free from that and to even have experiences that will confirm something else for you.
Well, and it relates
it takes
to
years.
I remember reading a study that autistics are more likely to internalize something as shame than guilt. So the idea of, let's say you make some sort of mistake, you internalize it as I'm a bad person, not, oh, I made a mistake. I made one thing went wrong, the meaning that we attribute to these things, it becomes a part of how we see ourselves. And that can be a story we continue to tell ourselves. Like, I'm a chronic failure. The world would be better off without me, whatever it is. Those, like, we attribute that to things that are actually quite small in the grand scheme of things.
I think it's because so many of us grow up with making mistakes that other people don't relate to, or they ridicule us for them.
And making mistakes more frequently without really understanding that it's a mistake until it's pointed out. And then that rejection sensitive dysphoria comes into it as well. And
potentially, yeah. I mean, we just have an experience of the world that carries a lot of misunderstandings. And those misunderstandings, like, the blame has to be put somewhere, because that is kind of human nature, that we want to attribute an explanation, and misunderstandings kind of have to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And instead of thinking that misunderstandings are a two-sided street, we are taught that they are our fault because people in general don't want to admit that they're the ones that made a mistake. And we are very easy to convince that perhaps it was us.
And we have a big problem. So Bruce and I just read a book. I don't know if you've done the book yet, called Reframed Self-Right for a Just Society by Stuart Shanker. And there's a whole section on Victorian misattribution that has really shaped how we think societally about certain behaviors, how we attribute like a moral virtue level to certain traits. So again, like laziness, if you think of all the phrases that the Victorians would have loved, like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, the idea of like teach a man to fish, right? Like that is like, the only reason he's not doing well is, it's a lack of motivation, or like, if he fails after we've taught him, that's on him. So there's like a moral judgment and everything. Just desserts. The idea that if people aren't successful, it's their own fault. It's a lack of drive. It's laziness. It's whatever it is. That view like the disregard completely for any systemic barriers, any other reasons why people are having difficulty, why they're coming up against barriers and like that doesn't exist through a Victorian misattribution lens. It's a personal failing if you don't do well. It's a personal failing if you don't have enough money, if you're not managing, if you're not getting by. And people still think that way and are not aware of the reality for many people.
Very true. I do think that culture is changing though.
Yeah.
Especially in some areas of the world. I feel like on social media, there's a lot more of a conversation about, how different things come about. Like even such a thing as obesity, like it's not just a simple thing. There's a reason why people overeat, or there's a reason why their bodies don't metabolize things the same way. Or
metabolic syndrome.
Things exist.
Yeah, it's not just diet and exercise. Wish it were.
Yeah. But like that's just an example.
But yeah, there's like a moral attribution to that as well, right? Where people think like if you're overweight, if you're obese, it's some sort of moral failing.
But I feel like we are starting to have more of a conversation about that things aren't necessarily just people's own fault. Yeah. And that there can be other reasons why you've ended up in a certain situation. Yeah. And then of course there's plenty of culture still left that doesn't recognize that.
Yeah. Okay, fun times.
hey, but it means we've still got work to do.
Yeah. I don't think we'll ever be out of business. Not that we're making money here, but
no. Well,
we're not. Well, that's a failing. All right, that's it.
Yeah. We need to be making money.
Yeah.
If we're not making money, why are we doing anything?
Exactly. Life is all about productivity. And
isn't the Western world all about capitalism?
Yes.
Hello. No. I had a conversation with another psychologist not too long ago. And it was funny because we had this moment of looking at each other and being like, well, we kind of hope to be out of business, but we just aren't, and we never will be. But wouldn't it be great if there just weren't anyone that needed therapy?
Or like Bruce and I talk about this in when we talk about inclusion and like truly inclusive schools. We're not there yet. We will always have advocacy to do in that area.
Yeah. So
yay, year in
so
review.
No, but so we've talked about things that changed, and the thing is, like, life changes all the time, and even when it does change, that doesn't mean that we've reached the end of the road.
No.
There's always going to be a new goal. There's always going to be something new to do, something new to accomplish, or somewhere else to move towards. And I think that's a part of what motivates us to keep living and to keep going, like to keep getting up in the morning. Because if there was nothing to do, like, sure, that's fun for a few weeks, but at some point you need a reason, right?
Again, this is you and I not talking enough. I hate the idea of having 2 weeks to do nothing. Like, no. And I emphasize, I kind of maybe making a little joke about it because evidently I spent 2 weeks in Cuba not doing everything, maybe, which was extremely enjoyable. Yeah. But it's funny. Because my entire life has been discovery, and I mean the sense that every day I want to learn something new. I've never had that idea of my life being stagnant.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to say I'm not a wonderful over the top optimist, but it's like the idea that even one can think about something is finished, just like, again, just such a foreign feeling for me.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I dream about it sometimes. Like once in a while, I'll have a moment where I'm like, can my life just please be simple and just stay in this box and not like, can I not do more, please? But then ADD comes around and I get bored and then I need to do stuff.
I hear you. So this past summer was my first 2 months, because you get 4 weeks off in the summer as an elementary teacher. It was the first time I didn't have like 5 other jobs. I've always worked in the summers. So it was my first summer so-called off. I was supposed to write a book. I wrote 2 chapters, so I was not productive. I mostly like dreaded writing and felt guilt about not writing. But there was not enough on my plate. There was not enough cortisol and adrenaline in my system from having many jobs to be able to produce anything. So like I don't really know how to relax. It's a bit of a problem that I have and I'm trying to work on. Because I would like to actually, like 2 weeks in Cuba sounds like a nightmare, actually. Like if I'm just at a resort, I can't just not do things. I would try it. But I bet after a day, 2 days, I would be done. I want to be like exploring. I want to be seeing new things. I want to be learning. I have a perpetual motion need. Like,
see, that's a big difference between us.
You're like,
if it's just if it's just 2 weeks or even a month, like,
no, it's too long.
Put me by a pool, give me a milkshake. Like I will just lay around, read a book, enjoy life. Like I
wish I could.
I will take that peace and quiet. But then the thing is, if I'm surrounded by people that want to do stuff, I get stressed by it. And then when I come back home, then it's like, oh shit, now I have to get back into life. And then the cortisol starts. And then it's like, okay, I have to do this and this and this and this and this and this. And
I might need the 2 weeks to like detox my system. Because I wish that I could have 2 weeks and just relax and read a book in a hammock or whatever it is that, but the thought of it makes me anxious. The thought of it makes me anxious.
Well, I think that the big thing is that you have to go somewhere else and do it.
Yeah.
Like you can't do it in your daily surroundings.
Yeah.
Because like if I'm at home, then I'll be constantly thinking about the laundry that needs doing or that thing that needs fixing or, whatever. But if so the last big trip that I went on, my mother-in-law invited us all to Thailand for her 60th birthday. And we actually, so my family-in-law is kind of weird because they have contacts to make it really seem like they have money, but like they're not super rich. But we all stayed in a 5-star resort for like 10 days.
Okay.
And waking up every morning and going to breakfast and just having some fresh fruit and then going to lay down by the pool and all of that. Like it was so peaceful, so good. And I miss it.
Yeah. Especially now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, right now, can somebody please take my 6-month-old for 10 days? Like
even one day.
Even one day, I will be restored as a person. No, just 2 hours, please. No, it's weird because at the same time, I'm also really looking forward to her like growing up and getting to like take her places and show her show her the world, you know. Like I want to take her to Edinburgh and Salisbury and
Yeah.
like Tokyo.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And I definitely at some point need to go and visit Tony in Brisbane, like with my family. Just go.
Yeah.
You won't like Brisbane. Take it from me.
No, I've been there.
I mean, because that's where I grew up, and I didn't like it at all. Growing up, when I went back, I couldn't believe how it hadn't changed, and that was just everything I needed to know about Brisbane.
Well, the thing is, I wasn't in Brisbane. I was at Tony's place, so he lives in Brisbane, but it's kind of the suburbs. And I was staying with him for a month, and then a month and a half.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah. And then we went to Cairns and Port Douglas. My now husband and I. And that part of the trip was just all tourism.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that's the Great Barrier Reef area, Kara.
Yeah.
White sand, blue water.
And oh gosh, Noosa Heads. That is the place I want to go back to.
So Noosa's that's problematic for me just because, like, growing up, Noosa was wilderness. There was maybe 1,000 people. I'm making that number up, but and it was for us because it's only less than an hour away from where I lived. Brisbane, yeah. But now it's the pictures I see of Noosa. It's a completely different area now, and I think that would disappoint me because it's very. I mean, it was always a tourist town, but it was a town. Now it seems to be a tourist city where thousands and thousands of people live. And I also acknowledge this is the problem of growing up in an area that for whatever reason you weren't comfortable with. So therefore, people seeing it for the first time, you think, well, don't you understand the 60 years of problems I had with it? And I'm actually, does Tony teach at University of Queensland?
I don't know. He is a professor, but I'm not sure what his attachment is exactly.
So I'm just assuming it's University of Queensland. I mean, the areas around University of Queensland are really quite pleasant, and the suburb I lived in is not that far away. And there's certain, really nice things about that. Anyway, this is too much. We've gone on a tangent on things.
Yes, we have.
Well, I mean, I was there in 2014, so it's quite a while ago. But I remember walking through the national park at Noosa, which was, at that point, it was about a 4-hour walk from the town to the cliff's edge.
I'm just trying to think where that would be. I mean, it has been literally 40 years since I've been to Noosa, so that doesn't.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, there was a trail through the park that leads up to like a cliff where you would watch dolphins and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And just on the other side, I think there was a nudist beach.
I thought, okay, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, that brought it all into perspective, eh?
Very much so.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a tourist town when I was there. I don't feel like it was that big, but it was a proper tourist town. But oh my God, I have stories of my Australia trip, and it's, yeah, we need to have a chat at some point about the stories of Australia.
That can be arranged.
Yes, let's do it. Oh, Kara,
Yes.
I'm pretty sure we have to wrap up soon, but when you mentioned your cat earlier, I thought we need to do an episode at one point about autistic people and service animals.
That's a great topic.
Because I see so many that get such joy and peace from having a service animal. And it's not just like a service dog or a cat necessarily. Yeah. It's all kinds of different animals. But maybe like, I don't know, something about where we find peace and support.
And like unconditional love. Yeah. You know, that's one of the things that, you know, I have students who've talked about their connections with their pets as well. And I remember one of them saying, like, you know, my dog never doesn't judge me. My dog loves me no matter what. Yeah. And I think
they're always happy to see you.
Exactly. For those of us who have often felt left out or like outsiders or, you know, not able to connect the way we want to connect to other people, you know, having a pet is a lifeline. It really is. Yeah.
Let's do that.
Sounds great.
I interviewed, I didn't interview, at the conference I organized in October, one of our presenters talked about their service animal, and they had a parrot in Amsterdam. And it was amazing. It was, and service animals are amazing, and cats are perfect service animals because they don't even know they're service animals. But the connection that this young man had with the parrot was still strong many years after the parrot had died. And he now lives in he lives in Montreal now. So, you know, it's like he's moved countries, he's done a whole bunch of different things. But you see when he talks about this parrot, it's just, yeah. I often do think that we are the animal attachment is so minimized when in discussion that how important animals are at a core family level.
Well, okay, I'm going to say something, and apologies to anyone who's offended by this, if you are. So within about a month, my grandmother passed away and my cat passed away. And obviously I'm sad that my grandmother passed away. She was 97. She had, you know, dementia. She'd been in a home. She wasn't doing well. So it came with relief as well as, you know, sadness that this wonderful human being is not here anymore. My cat, I see every single day for 10 years. Like the closeness that I have with my cat is greater. So the loss is in some ways, in many ways, so much harder. And people might think that's callous because one is a human and one is a cat, but like by virtue of the amount of time and the closeness that I spend with my cat, like that is an unfathomable loss for me.
You haven't spent the last 10 years cuddling all night with your grandma.
No, as much as I wish I could have sometimes.
Yeah, but you know? I mean, just by virtue of having that number of hours and that physical proximity, that closeness, on a purely biological level, the amount of oxytocin.
I was just going to say oxytocin,
that you have, that you have gotten from your relationship with your cat it's just naturally going to be that much more by virtue of that.
Yeah.
So even if we morally feel like,
I shouldn't say that.
Even if we morally feel like a human life should be worth more, but the loss of the cat is on a social and a biological level more.
I think I completely agree. And it's funny, it's interesting. Like there is a level of humanity where a loss of any human is sad. It's a tragedy. It's bad. War is terrible. Our connection to our animals, because of our social struggles, I think that cannot be emphasized enough. And I'm trying not to think of my cats that have gone, but I'm remembering sharing some recordings I made with my cat more than I'm remembering sharing them with my friends at the time. And this is 40 years ago. I remember talking to my cat about how much listening to this music meant, because I don't think I had a human I could talk to about that.
Yeah. So we need to do an episode on that.
Yeah, that sounds like a great topic.
Bring your tissues.
Yes, I definitely will. Well, it has been so wonderful chatting with both of you. I know the year ahead, Maya has a book coming out maybe next year for you. Anything else?
God, I hope so.
Yeah, you're like, please let it be over.
Oh yeah, it's been such a long time coming. Like we sent in the manuscript a really, really long time ago, like almost a year ago. And we had a long struggle about getting them to print in color. And they finally agreed. They finally agreed if we managed to cut a fourth of the book out.
Oh, that would be such a challenge.
Yeah. So we just need to cut a quarter of it. That's fine.
Heart palpitations.
Every fourth word. Just remove every fourth word. What could go wrong?
Yeah, totally. So we're going to be working on that, and hopefully in a year's time that book will finally be out. I've been working on it for so long, and it's it hurts. It hurts that it's not out already. Like,
well, we'll promote it next year around Christmas.
We will.
Or whatever holiday other people celebrate.
And we'll read it too.
I already beta read it. I can't wait to read the finished version. It was so good. Woo-woo.
Energy accounting, y'all. It will come out at some point. It will be there.
Can't wait. Yeah. Bruce, do you have anything upcoming?
Funnily enough, you just said y'all, and one of our new friends who I know is going to be a long-time, deep personal friend of mine is actually from Atlanta, and she says y'all all the time. And it's funny now, I hear every time anyone writes it, I won't say her name yet, her voice, and it's like, that's appropriate, because it's always that no one says y'all, but she's doing it all the time. That's kind of funny. Next year, I'm just doing what I'm doing. There's no big plans. I wish I had a book. One day, Kara, you and I will finally get working on what we need to do.
Other book, move on to the next one with you. Yeah, I hope to be done my book. Well, my deadline is May. I asked for an extended deadline. So I hope to be done by this time next year and have it coming out in 2025. I'll have moved. I will have my first summer where I am hopefully not writing a book and will be challenged to try to learn how to relax. That would be really nice. Learn how to garden. I've got a lot of upcoming things to look forward to.
Maybe you need to fly to Cuba to learn how to garden.
and
or come to Denmark. We'll teach you how to relax.
Okay, that sounds good. Maybe in the summer. We'll see how the household expenses are going if I have money for travel.
Yeah.
Again, maybe someone will donate money for us to all get together somewhere. Wouldn't that be nice? An angel donor.
Where?
Oh yeah.
Where should we meet? Where should we meet?
If we all went somewhere.
I'm gonna vote that it's probably gonna be Denmark, because otherwise I have a very young baby that needs to come with me.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
I was we should go to that Thailand resort, the 5-star.
When she's a couple of years old, I will definitely be up for that.
Well, I would love to come to Denmark, so it's definitely on my bucket list, and I'll try to come sometime in the summer when there's probably more to do. and not so cold.
And the weather's generally better.
Exactly. Hey.
All right.
Well, that's our year in review. And a little bit of talk about transitions. And it sounds like we're all handling them as best as could be expected and muddling through all the stuff that's a bit harder for us. And apparently that's what everyone does anyways. We're all just faking it through life, I've just learned. So
we are.
Yeah. All right.
Right.
We'll keep on keeping on. Love to both of you.
And you.
Yay. Thanks for everyone who was with us to celebrate this. This is our last episode for a little while. I need a bit of time off between editing, but we do have some people lined up for next season. So watch out for more episodes in a few months. Yay. Yay.
Yay.
Happy 2024. Autism.